Welcome. Today, we're looking at an incredibly unsettling warning from the other side of the veil. We're actually skipping our usual intro today because I want to plunge you straight into a perspective you've probably never considered before. It's a dark, urgent, cautionary tale aimed directly at those of us who eat meat, and honestly, it's going to challenge everything you think you know about the food on your plate. Let's get right into it.
I want you to take a second and actually look at your hands. Now, I want you to mentally imagine the excruciating, blinding pain of having your fingernails forcibly pulled out one by one with absolutely no anesthesia. It's a horrific thought, right? It makes you wince just thinking about it. But according to the chilling spiritual account we're diving into today, this exact level of agonizing pain is happening millions of times a day, right under our noses, and we just completely ignore it. Meet Wuli. According to our source text, Wuli is actually a human soul who is currently trapped inside the body of a fish. Through this channeled account, she is filled with this profound repentance, and she's practically begging us to understand what it truly feels like to be prepped for a meal. She gives us this visceral, heartbreaking look at what it feels like to be scaled alive. She says, scraping the scales, it's literally like your skin being peeled off, like having your fingernails ripped out. You know when you see a fish jumping and thrashing on a cutting board, we like to tell ourselves it's just a nerve reflex, right? Well, Wuli tells us it is absolutely not a reflex. That thrashing is the result of sheer, unimaginable agony.
So let's look at part 1, Wuli's human life, and how she got trapped in this cycle of killing.
How does a human soul actually end up trapped as a fish? Well, the text takes us back to the late Qing dynasty. Wuli's human life was basically defined by poverty, tragedy, and this inescapable karmic cycle of killing. Born into a super poor family in Heilongjiang, she was already fishing just to survive by age 8. By 24, her husband dies of tuberculosis, and her in-laws literally kick her and her infant son out onto the street. So she's forced back to her parents, taking up fishing, gutting, making fish sauce, just to keep her family from starving. Then, at 36, she suffers the tragic loss of her 12-year-old son, and 3 years later, Wuli herself passes away at just 39. Now, looking back from the underworld, Wuli is filled with agonizing regret. She tells us she actually had a brother in Hong Kong who was a vegetarian and practiced spiritual cultivation. He begged her to join him. It was a path that could have saved her soul. But she admits she was stubbornly focused on just surviving. By ignoring his warnings and choosing a life of killing, she sealed her own terrifying fate.
And here is where the text draws a really chilling parallel. Wuli made her living by violently extracting eggs from the bellies of female fish to make a profitable sauce. And at age 39, she died of a severe reproductive illness, which we recognize today as ovarian cancer. The text makes it very clear this is not a coincidence. This is exact, mathematically precise karmic retribution. Her specific method of killing literally became her exact cause of death.
Which brings us to part 2, Underworld Judgment, and the terrifying math of karma.
So, when her human life ends, Wuli faces the absolute, uncompromising judgment of Lord Yama, the king of the underworld. And this is where the concept of karmic debt becomes truly horrifying. She gets sentenced to 1,500 years of continuous suffering. I mean, really think about that time frame. 1,500 years of being born, violently slaughtered, and born again. Wuli says she desperately begged Lord Yama for leniency, asking for a lighter sentence, but his response was absolute. Karmic retribution doesn't care about human sentiment. It is strictly without error. You cannot bargain like you're selling fish.
The terrifying math of karma is just laid bare right here. For the crime of roughly 31 years of killing fish to survive, the punishment is astronomically disproportionate, 50 entire lifetimes incarnated as a fish to be slaughtered. This text is serving as a massive, urgent warning to the world. We drastically underestimate the spiritual cost of taking a life. A relatively short human career of killing locks a soul into a staggering, relentless cycle of punishment.
And it's not like she's just one type of fish either. Wuli lists out the specific reincarnations she has to endure: tilapia, salmon, tuna, bass. These are the exact everyday fish you see on restaurant menus or in your local supermarket freezer. She explains that she has to endure being each of these species, sometimes for 100 years at a time as a white pomfret, for instance. She constantly faces the sheer terror of the net, the boiling water, the frying pan, and that agonizing scaling knife.
Let's move to part 3, All beings have souls, resonating with the pain of animals.
This brings us to a fundamental spiritual assertion in the text, and it's aimed right at us, the modern consumers. We are being asked to completely shift our understanding by recognizing that all beings have souls. The source defines this through the concept of ling sing, or spiritual nature and sentience. Wuli argues this passionately from the other side. She says, look, if animals didn't have souls, why can dogs understand our commands? Why do animals struggle so hard when they're caught? Why do cows literally cry tears or kneel down to beg for their lives before slaughter? She definitively states that they feel physical pain and fear death exactly like we do. The only difference? They just can't speak our language to scream for help.
And this leads to a really harsh spiritual reality check for anyone who eats meat. The text says, when you desire meat, the karma of killing begins. Sure, you might just buy your food neatly packaged in plastic at the grocery store. You might never actually hold a knife yourself. But spiritually speaking, consumer demand creates the killing. Because you want to eat them, they have to die. This makes every single consumer fully complicit in this invisible cycle of suffering and karmic debt.
This takes us to part 4, the dual crisis. Toxins in the body, karma in the soul.
The source material does something really brilliant here. It grounds this ancient spiritual concept in a very modern reality, presenting what we can call a dual crisis of consumption. Eating fish today is essentially a double whammy. First, you have the unseen karmic debt. You are absorbing a heavy spiritual burden and dark energy from consuming a sentient being that died in absolute terror. Second, Wuli points out the unseen chemical toxins. Our oceans today are heavily polluted with invisible heavy metals and chemicals. Just like you can't see the karmic debt, you can't see the toxic chemicals in the flesh. So eating fish today physically poisons your body while simultaneously poisoning your spiritual nature with dark karma.
Finally, part 5, stop killing, release life, how to change our fate.
So the big question is, how do we break this? How do we change our fate before it's too late? The final section is Wuli's desperate plea to the living. Just listen to this deeply repentant warning. Do not believe in your momentary cravings. You must believe in karmic retribution. For those who don't, fortune has departed and disaster is near. She is practically begging us to prioritize our eternal spiritual safety over the temporary fleeting taste of a meal. And remember, she's speaking as someone who learned this lesson in the hardest way imaginable.
To answer her plea, the text gives us actionable, urgent steps. Number 1, adopt a vegetarian diet immediately to stop accumulating any new killing karma. Period. Number 2, perform good deeds and mentally transfer that positive merit to the animals you've consumed in the past. Number 3, and this is absolutely crucial, actively practice releasing life. Rescue animals that are destined for slaughter. This isn't just a nice thing to do. It's a vital spiritual rescue mission for your own soul to directly counteract and clear out the dark energy of your past karma. And lastly, you have to deeply realize that every individual carries their own karma. Just like Wuli's brother walked a spiritual path while she suffered, you and only you are responsible for the energetic debts of your own diet.
Wuli ends her message on a highly tragic and super immediate note. She reveals that right as she is communicating this warning, her current lifespan is ending, and she's about to be reincarnated again, this time as a crucian carp. It's an incredibly common fish, which means that right now, literally as we speak, she's doomed to face the knife, the scaling, and the frying pan all over again. Her suffering isn't just some story from the past, it is an ongoing, present reality.
This whole deep dive has taken us through an intense journey of karma, sentience, and the totally hidden cost of our appetites. The text is pleading with us to stop looking at food as just ingredients and to start seeing the deep spiritual reality right in front of us. So the question the source leaves us with is this. The next time you sit down to a meal of meat, will you remember the soul that suffered for it? Will you be the one to finally break the cycle? Thank you for joining me today. Take care and really think deeply about what's on your plate.